There's a conversation happening behind closed doors that nobody wants you to hear. While the world celebrates golden years and aging gracefully, millions of people over 60 are quietly drowning in struggles they're too ashamed to admit. The loneliness that cuts deeper than any physical pain. The moments you catch yourself in a mirror and don't recognize who's staring back. The slow, creeping realization that the world has started moving around you instead of with you. Society has built a beautiful lie about getting older, and that lie is keeping you trapped in silence while your real challenges go unspoken and unsolved. Today, we're tearing down that wall of pretense, because what you don't acknowledge, you can't prepare for, and what you can't prepare for will blindside you when you're least ready to handle it. The truth about aging isn't pretty, but it's necessary. And it starts now. What I'm about to share with you isn't found in any retirement brochure or senior living pamphlet. These are the 12 brutal realities that hit people after 60 like a freight train they never saw coming. The invisible shift that makes you feel like a ghost in your own community. The cascade of goodbyes that never stops. The body functions that fail you at the worst possible moments. The children who suddenly treat you like a child. The silence in your home that grows so loud it physically hurts. The calendar filled with medical appointments instead of meaningful moments. The sick feeling in your stomach at 3 in the morning wondering if your savings will last. The fear of falling in your own bathroom. The word you needed that just vanished from your mind mid-sentence. The desires and feelings that everyone pretends you shouldn't have anymore. The mountain of regrets that gets heavier every single day. And the nightmare that haunts every senior secretly, dying with no one there to witness your final breath. Here's why this matters. Knowledge is the difference between being a victim of aging and being the architect of your final chapters. When you see what's coming, you can build defenses, create systems, and find your people before the storm hits. Denial steals your preparation time. Awareness gives you back your power. Turn on any television commercial and you'll see them. Silver-haired couples laughing on beaches, playing golf in pristine sunshine, dancing in kitchens without a care in the world. Retirement commercials show endless vacations and grandchildren visiting every weekend. Magazine covers promise that 70 is the new 50. Social media influencers over 60 sell the fantasy that aging is nothing more than a change in hair color and an opportunity for reinvention. But walk into any senior center, any assisted living facility, any home where someone over 70 lies alone, and you'll find a completely different story. You'll find people who haven't had a meaningful conversation in days. You'll meet individuals taking 15 different medications just to maintain basic function. You'll encounter minds sharp as ever, trapped in bodies that refuse to cooperate. You'll witness the devastating gap between how society portrays aging and how it actually feels to live through it. The problem isn't just that we lie about getting older. It's that this lie leaves people defenseless. When you spend your whole life believing that retirement means freedom and joy, you're completely shattered when it brings isolation and irrelevance instead. When every message tells you that staying positive is enough, you're unprepared for the grief that becomes your daily companion. When nobody mentions that your own home might become your prison, you never make the modifications that could save your independence. This conspiracy of silence isn't kindness, it's cruelty. It robs you of the chance to prepare emotionally, financially, physically, and socially for what's actually ahead. And by the time reality hits, you're already years behind where you needed to be. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Phyllis. At 63, she was everything society told her she should be: active, optimistic, and looking forward to her retirement. She'd worked as a school administrator for 37 years, raised 3 successful kids, stayed married to her high school sweetheart, and saved diligently. Her retirement party was full of speeches about all the adventures waiting for her. Everyone kept saying, "You've earned this. Enjoy every minute." She believed them. The first year was exactly what the brochures promised. She traveled with her husband, took up watercolor painting, joined a book club, and felt genuinely liberated from decades of alarm clocks and staff meetings. But then, in month 14, her husband had a massive stroke. He survived, but the man who came home from the hospital wasn't the partner she'd known for 45 years. He needed help bathing, dressing, and remembering to take his pills. Physical therapy 3 times a week. Speech therapy twice a week. Neurology appointments monthly. Their travel plans evaporated. Her painting supplies gathered dust. 6 months into caregiving, Phyllis realized she hadn't seen her book club friends since the stroke. She'd canceled so many times they stopped inviting her. Her own children visited less frequently. Not because they didn't care, but because seeing their father diminished was too painful. So Phyllis absorbed it all alone. The loneliness crept in gradually, like water seeping through cracks. Days would pass where the only voice she heard besides her husband's fragmented sentences was the pharmacy technician on the phone. Then her body started failing in ways that humiliated her. The bladder leaks when she lifted her husband from his chair. The chronic back pain from helping him in and out of bed. The exhaustion so profound she'd fall asleep sitting up during the evening news. She developed a persistent urinary tract infection that her doctor said was common in older women, especially caregivers under stress. The infection made the leaks worse. She started wearing pads constantly and stopped going to the grocery store because she was terrified of an accident in public. Around month 22, something shifted in how her children treated her. Her daughter started calling every morning, not to chat, but to check if Phyllis had remembered her own medications. Her son began reviewing her bank statements and questioning her purchases. During one visit, they had a family meeting where her kid suggested she consider placement for her husband because this is too much for you, Mom. The way they spoke to her, gentle, careful, like she was fragile, made her feel like she'd lost her authority in her own life. They weren't asking her opinion. They were managing her. The financial pressure came next. Her husband's care wasn't fully covered by insurance. Out-of-pocket therapy costs, medications, medical equipment, home modifications. Within 2 years, they'd burned through $30,000 of savings she'd planned to last 20 years. She started lying awake calculating. If they both lived to 85, would there be anything left? What if she needed care too? The math never worked. The terror of becoming destitute, of burdening her children, consumed her nights. Then came the moment that broke her completely. She was helping her husband into the shower when her foot slipped on the wet tile. She didn't fall, but the near miss sent a bolt of panic through her chest. Suddenly, she saw her bathroom. The same bathroom she'd remodeled 10 years earlier, as a death trap. The high tub ledge, the slick floor, no grab bars. She realized she was afraid in her own home. Afraid of stairs. Afraid of the basement. Afraid of being alone with her husband, because what if something happened and she couldn't get help fast enough? And through all of this, her mind started playing tricks on her. She'd forget words mid-sentence. Stand in the kitchen, unable to remember why she'd walked there. Call her daughter by her sister's name. Each incident sent ice through her veins. Was this stress? Exhaustion? Or was this the beginning of something worse? The thing every senior fears most? She couldn't tell anymore, and she was too terrified to ask her doctor because what if he confirmed her worst suspicions? The loneliness, the physical breakdown, the loss of dignity, the role reversal with her children, the financial terror, the fear of her own home, the cognitive slips, all of it hit within 30 months. Phyllis went from retirement celebration to complete overwhelm in less than 3 years. And the worst part? She felt ashamed. Ashamed that she wasn't handling it better. Ashamed that her golden years looked nothing like what everyone promised. Ashamed to admit to anyone how desperately alone and frightened she felt every single day. Nobody warned her. Not one retirement seminar. Not one well-meaning friend. Not one doctor mentioned that this was possible. She'd planned financially, but not emotionally. She'd saved money, but not built redundant support systems. She'd optimized for the best-case scenario and had zero tools for the reality she got instead. And now, at 66, she felt like she'd aged 20 years and had no idea how to climb back out. You walk into a clothing store, and the young sales associate looks right through you, helping the customer behind you instead. You're at a family dinner, and the conversation flows around you. Your children debating politics, your grandchildren showing each other videos on their phones, but nobody asks your opinion. You raise your hand at a community meeting, and the moderator calls on someone else, as if you hadn't moved at all. This isn't paranoia. Studies confirm that people over 65 receive less eye contact, shorter interactions, and are interrupted more frequently in conversations than younger adults. Servers in restaurants hand menus to your adult children and ask them what she'll have. Doctors direct questions about your health to whoever accompanied you rather than to you directly. Strangers on the street look past you as if you're part of the scenery. The invisibility starts subtly, a moment here, a dismissal there, but it compounds until you begin to question whether you actually matter anymore. You find yourself speaking louder, repeating yourself, even acting out slightly just to confirm you still exist in other people's awareness. The psychological damage is profound. When society stops seeing you, you slowly stop seeing yourself. Your opinions feel less valid. Your presence feels like an imposition. You start shrinking, physically, socially, emotionally, until you've become exactly what they've treated you as: invisible. Your college roommate dies of cancer at 67. Your brother has a heart attack at 71. Your neighbor of 20 years passes in her sleep at 74. Your spouse, your life partner, the person who knew every version of you, gone at 76. Your childhood dog dies. Then the cat you got to fill the silence dies too. Each loss carves out a piece of you that never refills. And unlike earlier in life, when tragedy struck occasionally, now it comes in waves. Your phone rings with bad news every few months. Funeral programs pile up in your desk drawer. You attend more memorial services than birthday parties. The grief never gets a chance to resolve because there's always another loss waiting around the corner. You find yourself crying at random moments in the cereal aisle, during a commercial, while folding laundry because something reminded you of someone you've lost. Worse, you start losing people who were your witnesses, the ones who remembered your younger self. When they go, entire chapters of your history disappear because there's nobody left who was there. You become the keeper of memories nobody else shares. The loneliest position in the world. And society expects you to process this privately, to stay strong, to keep smiling at gatherings while inside you're carrying an avalanche of sorrow that has nowhere to go. Grief stops being an event you recover from. It becomes the landscape you live in. You sneeze and feel warmth spread in your underwear. You didn't make it to the bathroom in time again. You're talking to your grandson and catch a whiff of something sour, then realize it's coming from you, a body odor you can't control no matter how much you shower. You reach for a cup and knock it over because your depth perception isn't what it used to be. You stand up too fast and nearly black out. You pass gas without realizing it until you see the expression on someone's face. Your teeth are failing. Your hearing requires people to repeat everything. Your vision needs 3 different pairs of glasses. Food doesn't digest properly. Sleep is fractured and unsatisfying. Your skin bruises from the slightest touch and tears like tissue paper. You develop strange lumps, bumps, and spots that may or may not be dangerous. Hair grows where it shouldn't and falls out where you need it. These aren't just physical inconveniences, they're dignity assassins. Each incident reminds you that you're losing control of the most basic human functions. You start planning your life around bathroom locations. You avoid social situations where you might embarrass yourself. You wear dark clothing just in case. The body that carried you through decades of life is now actively working against you, and there's nothing you can do to stop the decline. Just manage it, accommodate it, and hope you don't humiliate yourself in public while trying. Your daughter starts keeping a list of your medications because she doesn't trust you to remember. Your son reviews your credit card statements and questions why you spent money at a particular store. They have conversations about you in hushed tones, in another room, on phone calls you're not included in, deciding what's best for you. They take your car keys. They suggest you move somewhere safer. They override your decisions about your own health care, your own home, your own life. The role reversal is so disorienting you hardly know how to respond. These are the people you raised, whose scraped knees you bandaged, whose homework you checked, whose lives you guided for decades. Now, they're guiding yours, and they're not asking permission. The loss of autonomy is breathtaking. You're suddenly living in a world where your own choices are subject to approval from people you used to give permission to. They mean well. Most of them genuinely believe they're protecting you, but it doesn't change how infantilizing it feels. You're not consulted. You're informed. You're not a participant in your life. You're a problem to be managed. And if you push back, if you insist on your independence, you're labeled difficult or stubborn or not thinking clearly. So you either submit and lose yourself or resist and face being overruled anyway. Either way, you've lost the thing that defined your adult existence, the freedom to determine your own path. The phone doesn't ring anymore. Days pass where the only person you speak to is the checkout clerk of the pharmacy. Your friends are gone, moved away, too ill to visit, or dead. Your family is busy with their own lives, their own problems, their own schedules that don't include regular visits. You eat every meal alone. You watch television alone. You go to bed alone. The silence in your home is so heavy it has physical weight. You start talking to yourself just to hear a human voice. You leave the TV on all day for the illusion of company. You linger at the grocery store, taking twice as long as necessary just to be around other people, even if they ignore you. Research shows that chronic loneliness is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, and early death. But the physical damage pales in comparison to what it does to your spirit. Loneliness doesn't just make you sad. It makes you question your worth. If nobody seeks your company, are you worth seeking? If nobody calls, do you matter? If you disappeared tomorrow, how long would it take for anyone to notice? These thoughts circle your brain in the endless empty hours. You try to stay positive, to find purpose in hobbies or routines, but everything feels hollow when there's nobody to share it with. Humans are wired for connection. When that wire is cut, you don't just feel alone, you start dying from the inside out. Monday, cardiologist. Wednesday, physical therapy. Friday, lab work. Next Monday, endocrinologist. Next Thursday, dermatologist. Then back to the cardiologist for follow-up. Your calendar used to hold lunch dates, book clubs, volunteer shifts, and family gatherings. Now it's a medical schedule. You know the names of every receptionist at your doctor's office. You recognize the same people in waiting rooms and exchange knowing nods like old friends. Your conversations revolve around test results, medication side effects, and which specialist gave you the best advice. You've become a professional patient. The problem isn't just the time consumed, it's the identity shift. You're no longer defined by your interests, your relationships, or your contributions. You're defined by your ailments. People ask how you are, and you launch into organ recitals. Your arthritis, your blood pressure, your digestion issues. You don't even realize you're doing it until you see their eyes glaze over. But what else is there to talk about? Your daily life is managing your declining health. The medical system becomes your primary social structure, and that's a devastating way to spend your final decades. Not living, but simply maintaining. You lie awake at 3 in the morning doing math that never works. If you live to 90 and your savings run out at 82, what then? If you need assisted living at $4,000 a month and Medicare doesn't cover it, what then? If your medications keep increasing in price and inflation keeps eroding your fixed income, what then? The fear of poverty in old age is primal and relentless. You watch every penny, skip purchases you need, delay home repairs, and refuse to burden your children with your mounting anxiety. You read articles about seniors eating cat food to afford medicine and think, that could be me. You see news stories about elderly people losing their homes and wonder how close you are to that edge. Every unexpected expense, a broken appliance, a dental emergency, a car repair, sends panic through your chest. The math haunts you because you know the two variables you can't control: how long you'll live and how expensive that living will become. You can't earn your way out of this anymore. You can't work harder, get promoted, or start over. You're locked into whatever resources you have, watching them drain month by month, year by year, with no way to replenish them. The terror isn't abstract. It's a daily companion that robs you of any peace your remaining years might have offered. The stairs you've climbed for 30 years now look treacherous. You grip the railing with both hands and still feel unsteady. The bathtub where you used to relax is now a slippery nightmare you navigate with fear. You've fallen once, maybe twice, and the memory of lying on the floor unable to get up haunts every movement. Rugs you've walked over 1,000 times are now tripping hazards. Your basement might as well be a pit of darkness you'll never enter again. The step stool you used to reach high shelves is now off limits. You rearrange your entire life to avoid danger zones in your own home. You sleep downstairs because you don't trust the stairs at night. You take sponge baths standing at the sink because the shower feels too risky. You stop cooking elaborate meals because you're afraid of the stove, the knives, the hot pans. Your home, the place that should be your sanctuary, has become a source of constant anxiety. And underneath the practical fears is something worse. The knowledge that this house you loved, that holds decades of memories, might have to be abandoned. Not because you want to leave, but because you can't safely stay. The place that was supposed to be yours forever is forcing you out through your own physical limitations. You're mid-sentence, and the word you need just disappears. It's there, right there on the edge of your brain, but you can't access it. You stand in a room confused about why you entered. You call your daughter by your sister's name. You forget whether you took your morning pills. You lose track of what day it is. Each incident is small, forgettable, explainable, until they start adding up. Then the fear sets in. Is this normal aging? Is this stress? Or is this the early stage of something catastrophic? You don't want to mention it to your doctor because saying it out loud makes it real. You don't tell your family because you're terrified they'll start treating you differently, watching you for signs, questioning your capability. So you hide it. You write everything down. You double-check constantly. You avoid situations where your memory lapses might be exposed. But the fear follows you everywhere. Every forgotten name becomes evidence. Every lost thought becomes a symptom. You're constantly monitoring yourself, scanning for decline, living in terror that your mind, the essence of who you are, is slowly being stolen. And the worst part? You're not even sure if your fear is rational or if the fear itself is a sign that something's already wrong. The uncertainty is its own special torture. You still have sexual feelings. You still crave touch, intimacy, connection. But society has decided that sexuality ends at a certain age and you've crossed that invisible line. People make jokes about older adults dating. They cringe at the thought of seniors having sex. Even bringing up the topic makes people uncomfortable, so you stay silent. If you're widowed and want companionship, your adult children react with anything from amusement to disgust. If you mention longing for physical intimacy, you're met with awkward silence or dismissal. The message is clear. Those needs are supposed to be behind you now, but they're not. Your body might not respond the same way, but the desire for closeness, for being wanted, for physical affection, that doesn't disappear just because you aged. Yet there's nowhere to put those feelings. No socially acceptable way to pursue them. You're expected to become asexual by default, to find fulfillment in grandchildren and hobbies, to accept that this part of your humanity is over. The loneliness of this is profound, to have normal human needs that everyone pretends you shouldn't have anymore. So you push them down, feeling ashamed for wanting what you wanted your entire adult life. Now suddenly treated as inappropriate simply because you've grown older. The career you didn't pursue. The relationship you let slip away. The trip you postponed until someday. The apology you never delivered. The reconciliation you were too proud to initiate. The risks you didn't take because you were afraid. When you're young, these are passing thoughts. Maybe someday I'll. But after 60, someday is gone. The doors have closed. The people have died. The opportunities have expired. What's left is the weight of what didn't happen. And unlike earlier regrets that you could still fix, these are final. You can't go back. You can't redo it. You can't call the friend you fell out with because they passed away 5 years ago. You can't take that adventure because your body won't allow it anymore. The what-ifs pile up like stones on your chest. What if you'd been braver? What if you'd said yes instead of no? What if you'd chosen love over security, passion over comfort, authenticity over approval? These questions have no answers now, only the hollow ache of missed chances. And the cruelest part is how much time you have to sit with these regrets. Hours alone, days with nothing but your thoughts, years stretching ahead filled with the echoing reality of who you could have been but never became. It's not death itself that terrifies you most. It's the possibility that when it happens, you'll be alone. That you'll take your final breath in an empty room with nobody holding your hand. That hours or even days might pass before anyone discovers you're gone. That your absence won't be immediately noticed, immediately mourned, immediately felt. This fear lives in the back of your mind constantly. When you're alone at night. When days pass without calls. When you realize your emergency contact list is shrinking. You've heard the stories. The elderly person found weeks after death because nobody checked on them. The neighbor who died alone and silent. The nursing home patient whose room went unvisited. You don't want to be a statistic like that. You don't want your final moment on earth to be solitary and unwitnessed. You want to matter enough that someone will be there. That someone will care enough to sit with you, to speak softly to you, to let you know you're not forgotten in your last moments. But you look at your shrinking circle and wonder, who will that person be? And what if the answer is no one? That fear, that deep, primal terror of dying alone and unmissed, shadows everything. It's the final dark truth that nobody wants to speak aloud, but that haunts millions of seniors every single day. Here's the devastating truth about pretending these realities don't exist. Silence doesn't protect you. It disarms you. When you refuse to look at what's coming, you arrive at crisis moments with no preparation, no resources, and no framework for understanding what's happening to you. You think you're being optimistic by avoiding the dark topics, but what you're actually doing is guaranteeing that when these challenges hit, they'll hit harder and leave deeper damage. Consider what happens when someone experiences incontinence for the first time without any prior acknowledgement that this is common. They don't just deal with a physical issue, they spiral into shame. They think they're uniquely broken, uniquely humiliated because nobody ever normalized this reality. They suffer in secret, avoiding social situations, isolating themselves, all because the silence around aging's indignities made them believe they're the only one. But they're not. Millions are experiencing the same thing, suffering the same shame, all alone because we collectively agreed never to speak about it. The same pattern repeats across every hidden challenge. When you're never warned that grief will become constant after 60, you interpret your persistent sadness as personal failure. You think something's wrong with you, that you're not resilient enough, not grateful enough, not moving on fast enough. You judge yourself harshly instead of recognizing you're experiencing the completely normal psychological weight of accumulated loss. Without that framework, you turn your pain inward and let it corrode your sense of self. When nobody prepares you for the role reversal with adult children, you're blindsided by the anger and resentment you feel. You love your kids, so why do you feel rage when they try to help? Because you weren't told this dynamic was coming. You have no tools to navigate it. You can't have honest conversations about boundaries and autonomy because you don't even have language for what's happening. So relationships fracture under the weight of unspoken tensions that could have been addressed if anyone had warned you this transition was part of aging. The silence around financial fear is particularly cruel. People suffer poverty-level anxiety alone in their homes, convinced they're the only ones who didn't save enough, didn't plan well enough, didn't sacrifice enough. They carry soul-crushing shame about their economic vulnerability when the reality is that most seniors face similar terror. The system is designed to leave people economically fragile in old age, but we've individualized the problem. We've made it a personal moral failure instead of a collective challenge that requires community solutions. So people suffer in isolation instead of organizing, advocating, and supporting each other through shared vulnerability. And perhaps most damaging, when we don't talk about these realities openly, we lose the opportunity for preventative action. There are practical steps you can take in your 50s and early 60s that dramatically reduce suffering later. Building redundant social networks. Installing grab bars before you need them. Having explicit conversations with your children about autonomy and decision-making while you're still healthy. Creating financial buffers. Establishing regular check-ins with friends. Joining support groups before crisis hits. All of this requires acknowledging what's possible, what's probable, and what's coming. But the silence strips away your preparation time. You coast along on the myth that aging means cruises and grandchildren, and then reality crashes through your door with no warning. By then, you're already in the crisis, already isolated, already ashamed, already overwhelmed, and you're facing it all from a position of weakness instead of strength because you were never given the truth when you still had time to build defenses against it. The conspiracy of silence doesn't spare anyone pain. It just ensures that when the pain comes, you face it alone, unprepared, and drowning in shame that never needed to exist in the first place. But here's what changes everything. The moment you name these struggles out loud, they lose their stranglehold on you. Not because the challenges disappear, they don't, but because you stop carrying them in shameful isolation. When you admit you're lonely, you create space for others to admit it too, and suddenly you've found your people. When you acknowledge your fears about money, about falling, about losing your mind, you stop wasting energy pretending everything's fine and start channeling that energy toward actual solutions. There are support groups for caregivers drowning in exactly what you're drowning in. There are resources for home modifications you didn't know existed. There are therapists who specialize in late life transitions. There are communities of seniors who've built rich, connected lives despite every challenge on this list. But you can't access any of it while you're hiding behind the lie that aging should be easy. The darkness only has power in silence. Speak it, and you'll find 1,000 hands reaching back toward you from people who've been waiting for someone brave enough to say the truth first. Your honesty doesn't just free you, it gives permission to everyone around you to stop performing and start living authentically in whatever time remains. What you've done by watching this isn't depressing, it's brave. Most people run from these truths their entire lives and pay the price in preventable suffering. You didn't. You look directly at what's real, and that makes you stronger than the lie ever could. This conversation needs to spread. Someone in your life, a friend, a sibling, a neighbor sitting alone right now, needs to hear they're not the only one facing these struggles. Share this video with them, not to frighten them, but to free them. Because every person who stops pretending is one more person who can start preparing, connecting, and building the kind of final chapters they actually deserve. The silence ends when you refuse to keep it.